Um, Thank you for being here, everyone. So this is the panel for geospatial impact evaluations in Asia. There's a couple of goals, or I guess I should introduce myself, Carly Muir. Moderating with me is Kunwar Singh. So a couple of goals for this panel. We're hoping to explore the challenges and the opportunities in using Earth observation geospatial data for evaluating the effectiveness of agricultural development projects in Asian countries, and to spotlight some examples of geospatial impact evaluations, how they're used as tools for understanding various effects of agricultural interventions across the region. So first, we will do introductions of our panelists, and then we'll have a 45-minute discussion with some questions, and then this will be followed by a 20-minute Q&A where we hope to get engagement from the audience. And ultimately, what we hope to come out of this is to facilitate knowledge exchange and provide participants with a good holistic overview of GIEs in Asia and how they inform evidence-based policies and development strategies. So our introductions, we will get started with Ranjitha Puskur. Ranjitha is a socioeconomist specializing in agricultural innovation systems and gender. Her research is focused on mobilizing science and knowledge for innovation to result in pro-women and pro-poor development outcomes in Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia, and the Pacific. She currently leads the CGIAR Impact Platform Evidence module and also the Gender and Livelihoods Research Program of the International Rice Research Institute. So I will pass this along to you and go ahead and click to your slide should be next.
Thanks, Carly. Should I be sitting or? I think I'm probably, sorry. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Carly. And yeah, I'm going to give you some examples of some of the work that we've been doing at IRRI, and only those that I am very closely involved in, but not the whole gamut of work, but just to give you a flavor of what we've been doing. And if you have questions about any other stuff that we do, thanks, Alice, for being in this room. Alice heads our geospatial analysis research unit at IRRI, so she'll answer all the questions. So I'm a social scientist. I don't ask me any technical questions. And yeah, Carly said we have to keep it to 2 to 3 minutes, but Indians, hard. Sorry. Just warning you. So, one project that I was leading and that we've continued to work on is in the Orissa state of India. There's about 8.5 million hectares of land that is left fallow after the rice crop in the rainy season in India. And that needs to be intensified. That's really important for food security, nutrition, and so on. There's a big emphasis from the government on that. What crops can be grown in that fallow season, right? Yeah, pulses, oil seeds, etc. So we worked with the government of India very closely to do this piece of work, trying to identify where are the rice fallow areas which have the best potential to enable a rice pulse or a rice oil seed, whatever cropping system. We've been characterizing abiotic stress-prone areas. You've heard, I think the other room, there was a lot of talk about stress-tolerant rice varieties yesterday. So so that's a lot of work that we have done, developed a number of varieties and promoted, but also looking at, short duration varieties which can be grown in these areas where there is possibility for a second crop, extrapolation, domain maps for targeting, different technologies and crop varieties, etc., and some of that. So I'm just going to quickly run through these things. So we tried to map fallows
after Kharif over several years, after 4 or 5 years. The main reason why most of the farmers leave their cropland fallow after Kharif is in the dry season is mainly because of lack of irrigation or not enough soil moisture. So we use this to sort of map the suitability in the whole state of Odisha, but then we also did district level mapping. In the previous session, we were talking about how not to try and boil the whole ocean, but then, get specific so that it's actually useful to the people who need to use it. So that's what we've been trying to do, different layers, and then, arriving at the suitability. Some of the products that we have developed is actually an atlas for Orissa for this, so that this can help the government to target where there's a massive program on intensification now, promoting a second crop, huge incentives, subsidies being provided, a lot of promotion. We are working with a number of other CG centers, the Happy CG family and ICR as well, oil seeds and pulses and vegetables, to see how we can, do that, use all this knowledge to be able to do that. We are doing it in other states as well, but this is where we have the most advanced kind of information and methodologies. And this is something we have developed for the government folks to actually use for monitoring these activities in intensification and mainly focused on the pulses, but we are trying to see if we could expand that to oil seeds and so on. A web GIS portal developed, the Department of Agriculture officials trained to use these maps and the data to see how, they can use some of this knowledge and information. But how much are they using is another question. We can come to that later in the discussion. Ta-da. Now. Okay. What's next in that bit? I think we can talk about it, but we want to look at not just looking at suitability for different crops, but, look at the double cropping systems as a whole and looking at what range of crops can be grown. So far, we've looked at pulses and oil seeds. What are the other crops which would be most remunerative, not just biophysically suitable, but also economically attractive, market demanded, etc., for the farmers, which markets to target, etc. And then this whole the climate variability and what does it mean in terms of impacts of these climate change on these dynamics. And as I said, there's a big government programs going on about fallow intensification, a number of interventions in place, a number of policies, being put in place. How do we assess the efficacy of these interventions and what changes and what outcomes and impacts as a result? Another piece of work that we did again for the government of Orissa was this, doing science-based crop insurance, mainly to give them real-time data to feed into their crop insurance program. So estimating yields and area throughout the season, start of the season, mid-season, end season. But also we've helped them with a lot of damage assessment maps each time. Orissa is a coastal state which is struck by, all climate shocks year after year, multiple shocks in a year, but year after year. So we've been very busy. So each time that happens, so we are immediately called into action. And then, in a week or 10 days or 15 days, we produce these and give to the government. Another piece of work, which I thought that might be interesting to share from the gender side of things, again, I was leading this work, is to identify which populations are at the highest risk from climate change. We always talk about how women are the most vulnerable to climate change impacts. So we wanted to see, map climate, agriculture, gender inequality hotspots. So we were trying to look at, places where high levels of climate hazards, high levels of women's engagement in agriculture, their exposure, and the vulnerability because of the prevailing gender norms, gender equalities actually converge. So again, this is something that came from a stable of people from different CG centers as a part of the CGIAR gender impact platform. So these are the kinds of variables we used and, the data, etc. And this is what we came up with at the global level, at the country level. The red, the brown and the orange, yellow ones are like the hot spots. These are like the cool ones. So you see the top 15 hotspots are in Africa, not surprising, but South Asia, parts of Southeast Asia as well are not too behind. So again, this is the kind of data that we used. It's all in that report. I can share that information. We also looked at, we used FAO data in terms of their exposure and engagement. So we looked at different activities, agricultural activities in which men and women are involved, and actually used that to when we started to do, their exposure, to do subnational analysis. So we picked 4 countries, top 2 from Asia, top 2 from Africa, from the global map, and then tried to do a subnational analysis. Where within these countries are the hotspots? So, again, one of the things I was trying to, the message I'm trying to convey is that the data that we needed, to build this has been a huge challenge. There's no comparable social data across these countries. So even if you looked at at the country level, we had these indices, that we could use. But the minute you went to a subnational level, there's no comparable data across the country. So we had to use different, data sources and all that. But an example of how this looked for Pakistan and Bangladesh. I mean, if you looked at cereals, where are the hotspots? If you looked at vegetable crops, which are the hotspots? If you looked at livestock, which are the hotspots? So, and what we are doing with this, so we started this in Bangladesh. So we picked a couple of hotspots within the country, and then we've looked at we did a situational analysis. What are food systems like? What is gender equality like? Are food systems transforming? What is the transformation like? And what is it doing to gender inequality? And then we are also looking at a couple of interventions in these places to do an impact assessment of what happens when interventions like these are implemented. What does it do to this hotspot status and these various dimensions at work? Thank you.
Okay, our next panelist is Farid Ahmad. So Farid is an evidence-driven executive and leader with a passion for promoting the sustainability agenda within international organizations. He has a background in research and evaluation and over 20 years in senior leadership positions. He uses evidence-based best practices to bring measurable results to the organizations with which he works, and he specializes in program complex evaluations, impact assessments using both qualitative and quantitative approaches.
Thank you. Thank you very much. At the outset, I would just like to mention a few things that my organization, it is ICIMOD, works as an intergovernmental regional organization in extended South Asia region, and that covers Afghanistan to Myanmar. So it's connected with the Hindu Kush Himalaya mountain region. So we work for 8 member countries. Basically, I will not be talking about a lot of impact assessments and evaluation, but few examples of how we have supported different member countries in evidence-based decision-making process while using Earth observation application systems. One of because this is part of our large we call it Regional Landscape Program. And we are actually collaborating with the NASA USAID program, which is called SERVIER. Actually, we are able to get to good imageries and satellites. And at the same time, you know, with them, we work very closely and get capacity to our region. And also with a lot of universities who are also involved in doing a lot of research and getting the latest technology. That is another area that we can collaborate and use that network a lot to support our member countries. So in you know, one of the major issue in our region is the forest fires. This April, actually, Kathmandu was highest in terms of, you know, pollution, and all schools were closed, and it was really, like, you know, very, very bad. So we have developed a system to assess the forest fires across, and I hope this is going to help. And another thing that with the government of Pakistan recently we have done, it's called one of the largest, actually, tree plantation program globally. It's called 10 billion tree plantation program by the earlier prime minister. He used to call it, you know, billion tree tsunami. So, and we have done an assessment of that, develop a system for the government to see whether that program is, like, you know, has been successful or not. And that data, because they're not really interested at that particular time to do an impact assessment, but rather than develop a monitoring system for them so that they can see the changes over a period of time. And we have been also using land use mapping and land cover analysis across the region. And particularly, we have worked with the government of Nepal in, you know, coming up with the land cover analysis and land cover system, which has been now updated and and also adopted by the national government. And these things, like, you know, over a period of time of last 10 years that we have worked with them, now they have adopted this system, and the ground level, you know, ground truthing has been done. So, like, you know, this entire team was out to do all this analysis, and now, like, you know, this is formally adopted. So this is one of the decision-making tool by the government. Like, you know, it helps them to design programs, and these things can be used largely for later on for any kind of impact assessment that by the government, by us, by any other agencies that, you know, they can use this reliable data. And one of the major problem in our countries is that, you know, we call it too much water or too little water. So when, like, you know, too little water, it's almost a kind of drought situation. And we have developed a system that our member countries actually are hooked to, that they are using this system to see that, you know, what kind of issues are coming up. So for the drought monitoring system, actually now they are customizing it to their own country situations based on this large. And we are working very closely with NASA SERVIER program, whether we can issue a kind of forecasts that based on the satellite data, that, like, you know, what are the, you know, possibility or the likelihood of the drought in XYZ country in the region. And this data is also very helpful for agriculture development, or, you know, any varieties or anything that, you know, farmers are going to introduce, are working on. I think this data can be also used for any, you know, design of the programs, but at the same time for any impact assessment and like that. And you know, in our upcoming evaluation or impact assessment, we are going to use this to assess the effectiveness of one of the programs. Like, you know, here you can see also the rice, you know, thing. So from my side, actually, I just wanted to mention these few quick work that selected on the agriculture and forestry system, but we are also working on, glacier monitoring. And because this is one of the largest, after third pole, we have the largest ice storage in the Hindu Kush Himalaya. So one of the tools for us is that really geospatial technologies that we are able to use. So we have mapped it out, the entire, Hindu Kush Himalaya region, how many glaciers are there. But it is not only the glacier, but we are trying actually to see how many glacial lakes are actually building up as a result of climate change, and what is the likelihood of them to have a kind of outburst floods, and then the impact of it in the downstream. So huge actually implications are there. So for us, actually, it's not only for impact assessment. Impact assessment is one of the dimensions, but for us, working with the geospatial technologies, is the requirement, because we will not be able to reach out or access all the rugged mountain regions that we have, and the largest, I think, the highest mountain peaks in the world. So that is the region that we are using this, and I'm sure with this collaboration with the GeoField and with all of you, we are very encouraged to see that how this technology is now being used for the impact assessment and evaluation. And I'm looking forward to have any kind of collaboration or opportunity to work together, how better we can use such capacity for even supporting the governments to do even evidence-based decision making through really good impact assessments. Thank you very much.
All right, our next panelist is Manjula Ranagalage. He's a professor in environmental management at Rajarata University of Sri Lanka. He has more than 17 years of experience as a GIS and remote sensing specialist in South Asia, and he has completed over 50 geoinformatics related research works and published them in high impact journals. His research expertise spans various critical areas, including land use, land cover change, particularly for forests, forest cover change, as well as urban geography as it relates to climate, green space, and heat islands. He uses GIS and remote sensing applications for environmental and resource management, including disaster management, such as tsunami, vertical evacuation, and soil erosion management. Professor Ranagalage conducted his research in not only in Sri Lanka, but also in other Asian countries such as India, China, Japan, South Korea, Indonesia, as well as some African regions.
Good morning. Thank you very much for introduction. And this is, today I'm going to present some of the case studies, that mean research we have conducted from during the last 5 to 8 years. In this slide, I just put the title of my research papers. And also, apart from that, we have done several research in African region also, but I did limit to this one because this is the Asian challenges. Then why that as a researcher, I am from academia, then as a researcher and academic field, we want to, we all are in the South Asian region that we are facing same problem is scarcity of the data. And also the data, spatial and temporal variation of the data is not good for us for the policy making things. Then what we can do? Then we can do is we need to depend on that Earth observation data. Then when it comes to Sri Lanka, we are highly dependent on the Earth observation data, because in when come to meteorology data and some land use and land cover map, we have very limited. Then temporal resolution is very low. Then we have conducted during last few years. This is most of the papers published in that high index journal. The very first one is now under review in that one. we did one paper, the long-term rainfall variability and trends for climate risk and the summer monsoon region in Southeast Asia, because we want to see what is happening over that time period, because from 1981 to 2021 is almost 30 years. Then we want to monitor how we can use that one large scale for the large area. In addition to that, the second one is spatial forecasting of the landscape in rapidly urbanization hill station in South Asia. Because in my country, Nuwara is the hilly area. I think some of you have experienced that we call Little England. Because during last few years, the last 30 years, we observe that the green cover is not changed, because the policy, the government policy for that area, we have protected forest. In our research paper, I remember one reviewer asked, this paper is local interest. What is the importance of that publishing this paper in remote sensing journal? Then I said, during the last 30 years, urbanization and agriculture development, forest cover is not changed much. Then that is why that someone can say the developing region, the policy is not working. But if we have a tough policy, we can protect that forest cover and that kind of things. The other one is satellite-based meteorological and agriculture drought monitoring for Sri Lanka, that for the whole country. We prepared, we developed that agriculture vulnerability map for the policy. And the fourth one is more important for us. We are highly vulnerable for the deforestation. Then during last 30 years, no one has done for that comprehensive study of the entire dry zone of Sri Lanka. Then we did this paper with collaboration with US, Japan, and some African universities. Multi-decadal forest cover dynamics. What happened from 1990 to some in 2019. Then we developed a recent map, and we developed that deforestation based on the district level. In addition to that, we are doing some kind of another application, because academia, I cannot limit for the some area. Then more potential areas, I want to do my research. Then what we can do is, as the academic research institute developing region, we highly depend on the freely available the observation data. If you want, especially for the monitoring the deforestation hotspot, we don't have high resolution image. Then we need to go for the at least sentinel data. Then we are using mainly for the research activities, graduate and undergraduate level. Then that is, in addition to that, environmental science and ecology, agriculture and forestry, disaster management. Those are the area we are focusing. In addition to that, we are focusing on the urban also, because in Asian and African region, we're more vulnerable for the urban related problems. We are doing this kind of research project to give our new knowledge to the policymakers. They can implement the policies based on the some kind of, always policymakers they are giving that we don't have data, we don't have train, how we can develop the policies, something like that. That we need to overcome that one, and that is why we are doing now. Then the scarcity of the spatial data becoming more challenges for the researchers and also the policymakers. I think if we can, as a region, in at least South Asian and Asian region, if we can develop some collaborative research activities and the common spatial data forum to download the data for the research purpose, to upload the data, if anyone want to share the data, then that kind of things, I think that is some of the things we need to focus in the future. Then thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right. And last but not least, we have Manzoor Dar. Manzoor Dar is an agricultural development professional with 17 years of global experience in seed and delivery systems, technology evaluation, impact assessments, agricultural extension systems, and scaling of climate resilient agri-food systems. During his long stint with CGIAR institutes, he earned rich experience in evaluating technologies and impact assessments for developing evidence-based arguments for policy change. Manzoor has conducted various studies and RCTs in collaboration with the University of Berkeley, Tufts University, University of Chicago, and Stanford University, which involve the use of remote sensing and GIS for the identification of target sites, measure the adoption of crops, and assess the crop yields.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to do today is to share my experience of working on the subject while I was working with IRRI, and also now when I'm associated with ICRISAT. So some of the work that I'm going to share with you, belongs to rice, and some of them could be, other crops. So, the first slide, what I wanted to show you was how we can use remote sensing, GIS, or such type of information data for dissemination and evaluation. So we are mostly here talking about using Earth observations for impact evaluations, but we can also use it for other purpose like targeted dissemination. So this slide used Rajarata 2-based flood inundation. This is again in Odisha, where we had a technology of flood, like flood tolerant rice that could withstand flooding up to 14 days. And then, that is a limitation of the variety. And I mean, we had to do an impact assessment of this variety. We had to select areas where inundation do not proceed beyond 14 days. So I'm not aware about the methodology, how it was done, because I'm not the remote sensing person, neither am I an economist. So we use this data to identify some 356 villages where we wanted to do this randomized control trial. But at the same time, while this variety was released, we also used this similar data for large-scale dissemination, so that the seeds could be prioritized in the areas where it is more suitable to. This is one, and then I'll also talk about the opportunities and some of the feedback that we have received and we have come across through these slides. Use Earth observation to identify fallows, right? Which is already talked by Ranjitha, that because there is a huge interest from the governments to intensify cropping in those areas. So the idea is how we find the suitable areas for different crops and varieties with different durations that can sustain the kind of moisture in those areas. So that is one thing, one opportunity where I guess institutions like IRRI, ICRISAT, and others are also working. We can also measure the adoption of new technologies. Like we have seen a lot of change in cropping patterns, particularly when the short duration crops have come into existence. There is a possibility of increasing cropping intensity where we can go from 2 crops to 3 crops, or from 1 crop to 2 crops. So there is there is a challenge how we can map that, those changes, whether we can look at, the changes that happen in the field through remote sensing imagery, and how varietal distribution. I mean, this is a challenging job, but this is something, which could be very interesting in future. And then again, monitoring of agricultural development projects. We know, geolocations are so important. We can use those for monitoring purpose, and we map the areas and things like that. Now, next is for yield measurements and losses. So we can use these informations for both, right? So why do we need to use this type of technologies to measure the yield? Existing means of yield estimation has some flaws. In developing countries, there are issues of accuracy, the issues of transparency, the issues of reporting, variation in plots, and manpower challenges. So if we have a technology that makes it economical, cost-effective, accurate, that's going to replace the existing, the way we're doing it now. The magnitude of crop cutting is the common practice, particularly in India, but magnitude is so high. You need hundreds and thousands of crop cuts because there's a lot of variation also in the areas. You can't just extrapolate from 10 points and then, and reach to a conclusion for a bigger area. So when we see magnitude is high, the cost is high. So we use remote sensing and GIS for, yield estimation, accuracy, and then can predict reliable production estimates, which can also help us, like I can give an example. We have in Odisha or in other parts of the country, in India, we have this procurement process, like we have minimum support price where government has to procure the product from the farmers. So if we have better yield estimates, there could be kind of preparedness for how much a government has to procure. So this is very useful, as the tool that can estimate yields with accuracy. And similarly for losses, we get sudden floods, other things in Odisha, which is very common. Can we use remote sensing and GIS and therefore predict the reliable, okay, this is done, sorry, assessment of losses. So can we quickly measure the losses and, prepare a contingency plan, because government has to always, move swiftly, take a decision about what do we do next for the farmers who have lost crop at one point of time. So can we use remote sensing or earth observations to quickly, I think, there was a slide from IRRI that in Odisha, they're doing it. So this is going to be very useful. And finally, the crop insurance. Again, we have weather-based crop insurance working in India. There's a lot of conflicts and mistrust between the insurers and companies and all. Can we use imagery for assessment of losses that can build some trust between the insurers and crop service providers, companies? And one thing I wanted to share here is, look at this map. This is the similar map which Ranjitha also, displayed. This is suitability of different crops in same state, right? So you can grow chickpea here, you can grow based on. So we have same maps in ICRISAT, we have similar maps from IRRI. We have, I don't know whether the methodology is same. So, but there was discussion whether we collaborate and can work together and maybe make it more, add some value to this. But I think I was discussing with colleagues outside, I think we sometimes don't do it purposely because we're competing for funds. So that's an issue. Yield estimate experiment that Kyle, myself, did with Stanford University. And what we wanted to see is how this remote sensing, can measure the yields, rice yields in Odisha. So we took some 3,000 polygons, mostly rice and some other vegetations. And we did, finally we had some 2,500. And we did crop cuts, around 300 crop cuts. And we also went to the farmers and asked for the yield for that plot. So there was very, pretty low correlation between crop cut yield and survey yield, but it seems there was a good correlation between, GCVI, which is green chlorophyll vegetation index, and the ground-based yield. So the point is, the conclusion was Sentinel-2, GIS seemed to do pretty good job of picking up. Now the point is, where do we go from here? I asked the question to the researchers. Sometimes, unfortunately, we have an aim of doing something for the sake of getting a very good publication. So if there is no publication value, we may not move forward, right? This is, for the researchers, this was not a very new finding that will give a very good publication. But for us, it is very useful information if that is really working. And for the governments, who actually, I remember Odisha government asked IRRI that time to give us some technology so we can get rid of these crop cuts. So it's still valuable, but I'm not sure if we have good accuracy, why can't we just scale it up and talk to the stakeholders, policymakers, and get some work on that. Finally, I'm not going to go into details. This is some information that our team is doing, in remote sensing, crop path maps, irrigated this fallow identifications, length of growing period, stress maps, everything looks like is available. Land use change, crop intensity, so everything, it's like, but then as we discussed, that ground truthing, I mean, the verification from the ground, and when we are designing a evaluation program, I think it's very important that we have a team of interdisciplines, designing that program so that we don't have challenges later on when we actually implement the impact evaluation. So that's all I wanted to talk in my presentation. So I think we can carry on. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all the panelists. So the next component of this panel is to have a discussion around some questions that Kunwar and I developed for you. Because of time, I'm sure we won't get to all of them, but that's okay. We certainly want to leave some time for other people in the room to ask questions as well. I think as we saw, we have a panel that is very diverse in terms of experience, where you all are working, what you're doing. So hopefully with that in mind, it would be great to hear what you all believe are the greatest challenges facing the uptake of GIEs in Asia. Are there environmental or political issues that present unique obstacles in the region? And then similarly, what are the regional issues that have the greatest potential to incorporate GIEs? So we can go down the row here. Gita, if you want to start.
Yep. Thanks. I think, I don't know, I mean, how many of you were in the previous session, but the one that Hannah co-facilitated, I think we were discussing all those challenges in that session. And I think I'd probably, at the risk of repeating, she had a great slide. I looked at it and said, ditto, 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 It is, I think, to a large extent, I mean, data is an issue. Generating continuously the kind of data that is needed for monitoring and impact evaluation, the expensive nature of the geospatial data is an issue. Capacities are an issue. And I think one thing that I have been struggling with as a social scientist, I want to try and incorporate as many gender and social dimensions into this work while we do impact assessment. But then I have no idea how to do it. And we have a fantastic geospatial analysis team. I mean, very, very capable, highly qualified, and they are also very enthusiastic about it. But then it's like, what's doable? What's possible? They're like, yes, we would like to work with you. Do this. Tell us how. It's like, gosh, I was hoping you'd tell me how. So it's like, who do we turn to, or who are the partners that we can work with, to make this happen? Sometimes we actually might have the resources to do this stuff, but capacity is becoming a problem. And, being able to allocate enough time to dig into it and brainstorm and sit together and say, okay, what should we be doing? And pushing through a little more into new frontiers in this area. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry.
Well, thank you very much for that question. From our perspective, when I say our, it's like, the region that I represent here is the Hindu Kush Himalaya region. Actually, for us, this is the tool, as I said in my presentation as well, that to cover large, data that we have such a deficit. 2007 IPCC report actually said that this is the data deficit region. And there was hardly, any evidence that they were able to cite in order to raise, issues of Hindu Kush Himalaya. And at the same time, because of the data issues, there was also a large anomaly in that report that was, in IPCC, that by 2035, all the glaciers will be washed away. So I think that was such a revealing, problem that India, actually, one of our large member country, they were really not happy about such an evidence that has been created and reported in IPCC. And we stepped up from there, and as a small organization, to really what we can do to really reduce that knowledge gap in the region. And GIS and remote sensing has been one of the major tools that helped us. And in the last IPCC report, we can proudly say that 6 ICIMOD staff were lead authors in different chapters. And that you can imagine that, how much we have been able to contribute to those processes. Still, we are engaged with IPCC. So what I'm trying to say is that I think the region that we are in is we still have a lot to do in terms of knowledge and in terms of evidence. And I fully agree that we have capacity issues. And if you look at it, countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and many smaller countries like Nepal, Bhutan, I think the GIS and remote sensing capacities are low. Is India and China, they are really, they don't need much support because they are already advancing in this area, and we can use that support to support other member countries in terms of building the capacities there as well. Another challenge that we are facing is that how much the member countries have appetite for evidence-based decision making or the policy making. And what we see is that any document that you picked up, whether it's a national level policy or provincial level policy, all are done by international consultants. Beautiful documents that are there, but whether these are evidence-based, nobody can guarantee that. And it is a lot of time, and most of the time these are politically driven. And you can see that less appetite for evidence-based policies. And I would say that, from the yesterday's deliberations, especially the keynote speakers that in the beginning, the impact assessment is one of the major tools that can help in evidence-based policymaking. I think if we are able to generate good evidence while using these technologies and integrating that with the randomized control trials and many other methodologies that we are using, and we have seen that last 2 days, so many people are working on it. I think this field will help. And that is another biggest challenge that we are facing, that how we can make our policies much more evidence-based. And that is across the region. And another challenge I would also like to highlight here is that many technologies are being piloted. Many things are being tested and demonstrated on the ground, but the challenge is scaling. It's really how better we can actually put these things into the design of the programs, that evidence is actually literally driving it, and then it becomes easier for scaling it. First, we are trying and testing, piloting, and later on developing and scaling a strategy for it. I think that is not going to work. I think from the very beginning, if the designs are evidence-based, we will reach to the conclusion that this is not working and why it is not working and what are the lessons learned. So the same thing can be, communicated to the policymakers and decision makers. So these are the few challenges that I thought that I would like to share. Thank you.
Statement that jumped to mind when Farid was talking, as they say, pilots never fail, pilots never scale.
Yeah, that when come to the challenges, and in my country as well as I'm just talking about the South Asian region, one of the main thing is that policy. That he said that policy is not the evidence base. That policymakers are not researchers. Researchers cannot make the policies. In my countries, the most of the policies based on the political agenda. That the deforestation, environmental issues, waste related things, most of the things, we actually as a researcher, we don't have privilege or we don't have any platform to share our knowledge with the policymakers. Then that is the biggest problem we face, because that we are doing some research in high advanced technologies we use, that mean earth observation data, in addition to that ground-based research and this all. But policymakers, they don't accept that kind of the evidence. That is the biggest challenge and also the biggest problem. In addition to that, another one is the data availability. Data availability and also data sharing policies. Even if you want to go for the research if we ask for the research work, we need data from some government organization. They ask, yeah, we need money to get the data. I think Ranjitha knows about the Sri Lankan situation. We have given our government money, public money, to collect the data, but they are not allowed to researchers to use that data. That is why earlier I know that there was some attempt to prepare the spatial data infrastructure for my country, but some major institute, they refused that one. They want to sell that data again and again. I know some companies and also some institute, they sell their data to the 5-6 universities at once. But even in the research institute, we don't have that kind of sharing policies. That is the one is. Other one is actually diversity environment of that our area. That is, that when come to Sri Lanka, using earth observation was also challenging, because in dry zone signatures and wet zone signatures, totally different. Within the very, very limited that kilometers. That is one of the biggest problem. And also that data availability, that means Earth observation data, we as a tropical country, we have a lot of clouds and the things, then the availability of the clear images also the becoming one of the problem. Then in addition to that, we have that all that kind of that problem associated with the poverty, and also that that kind of things, because due to the previous after the COVID, we had the large the problem associated with the economic crisis. Then the poverty, inflation and things, poverty increasing. Then that some environmental problems that we cannot solve without that addressing to that issue. Now it's becoming challenges. Another one is that yesterday also I discussed with some people that in Sri Lanka, we have a very good biodiversity hotspot, but some areas we have policies, some areas actually we don't have proper policies. That is why the major reservoirs that already silted around 40 to 50% during the last. The wondering thing is we have tank cascade system from 2,500 years ago. Still they are functioning well. More than 3,000 tanks we have in dry zone. One day you can experience that how that interconnected the small tank to the larger tank. But thing is, the government after the 1970, they started one rapid development project of the main river in Mahaveli River. They built several reservoirs. Now, due to the rapid environmental degradation, deforestation, and also no proper land use planning to cultivate in upper area, they use for the vegetable cultivation. Earlier it was a tropical tobacco cultivation. They remove the primary forest and then the secondary forest, that kind of things. The most of the area, that is most of the reservoirs already silted. That kind of, there are so many things. Other one is a capacity building, that there are few people they are working. This time is a very crucial time for us because brain drain. During the last 8 months of the Sri Lanka, altogether nearly 600 people left the university, academia, and doctors, engineers, they are moving to another country because of the tax acceleration of the tax percentage and also the cost of living. And those are the things. Now those who are working in that, even that it's very difficult to get the visa even in some countries. The academia is still we can apply for the visa and get, but some others cannot, researchers as well, because they don't trust. The most of the people, they want to jump from to another country. I think in next decades we'll have big problem for us. One of my African friends say next decade, the most probably for that last 5 decades in Africa, because Africa also had the same phenomena in the earlier. Most of the knowledgeable people move the countries. That is the things associated with. I think what we can do is, there are some available resource at IMI. They are doing well, but I don't know government how they deal with it. Then those are the things we will try our best to, as a researchers, to do that one. Then actually, thank you very much for giving this opportunity to share our knowledge. And then we can, I always said, the region, we have similar problem. We cannot find the solution for individually. We should work together and come up with some concrete solution for that one. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add a few points to what has been already discussed. I think, if we look at Asia and in the context of using impact evaluations rigorously, there are a lot of opportunities we already talked about. There are a lot of issues where governments would need data, evidence-based information to maybe deploy, policies. But what we need to keep in our mind is, while designing any evaluation, impact evaluation study, is the strategic, vision of the countries, their priorities. What are their priorities, for the country in terms of food security or food production or anything related to that. So if we really align with those strategic visions of the countries, that makes our study more relevant and gives us a puts us in a very confident and comfortable position to go to the policymakers and talk to them about what you have learned and how can it help country develop systems. At the same time, I think it's also very important when we talk about evidence and evidence we generate when we collect data, and the quality of data is so important. So our cities are considered to be very rigorous in terms of, not only because they are, technically very sound, but also the data quality has to be ensured. And I think if we have any compromise on data collection tools, and by using any tools, then whether it's our city or it is any study, we may go to a wrong direction in terms of what we recommend or from the study. At the same time, I think again, when we talk about evidence, we have to show evidence that the technology or the any intervention that you have studied, or you proposing some remote sensing interventions that can help, have to be cost effective with evidence on cost as well. So because when you go to policymakers, governments to tell them to adopt or scale this one, and they will first ask about what is the advantage, how much, what are the returns, cost, and all. So when we are generating evidence, I think we need to be very sure that this is cost effective with data showing that evidence, and also not only research on measuring impact of technologies, but also research on identifying strategies to scale up those technologies. And that's the area which still needs a lot of attention, because we stop at a point where we have evidence for something is working well, and then we don't know how to scale it up, and we still see there's less adoption, it's not working and all. So I think that extension research, something which could be maybe lesser costly than the traditional extension systems could be a good area to consider. And finally, I think, as I said, accuracy has to be there. It has to be economical, and capacity. I can maybe quote one example from IRRI, when we were asked to develop some maps in Odisha for letting them know how much area of rice is grown, and things like that, including yield. And also we engaged SARMAP, and they gave us some information. We just passed it on to the state, right? So, but then question comes, state says, okay, that's fine, this is information for 1 year, but we would need similar information for the next 5, 10, 100 years. You have to build our capacity. We have a remote sensing station team. How can they use this technology so that we can adopt this process for future? Otherwise, it becomes like a service providing. You buy a service for 1 year. So I think, that collaboration is very important. Building capacity of national systems, to what extent it is possible, is very important. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. All right, so our next question, it's come up multiple times throughout the last few days, is this idea of multidisciplinary work when it comes to GIEs. So my question for all of you is, what role does multidisciplinary work play in promoting and carrying out GIEs in Asia, and how does this differ from maybe traditional multidisciplinary work? And follow up on that, can you think of any examples where work being done in Asia is maybe leading the way in using GIEs, multidisciplinary? Sorry, we'll start with Farid and go Manzoor, and then Manjula and Ranjitha.
Well, thank you very much. Again, very important question. In my own experience of my organization, actually the tendency of the geospatial scientists, not offending all my colleagues here, but the tendency is that they think that they can be foresters at the same time, they can do the agriculture at the same time, because they use this technology for assessing things. And they at the same time can be foresters. So one of my previous role was that in the organization, how can we bring these together? Because I have a lot of GIS and remote sensing specialists on one team, and then the forester and agriculturist on the other team. And hardly they're talking to each other. So I think over a period of time, what we have learned from that process is that for any kind of assessment, be it as an impact assessment, be it an general any other system level analysis, I think the social scientists, the agriculture, and the remote sensing and GIS people have to come together. So, and one thing that from this field that when I come here and interacting here with colleagues is that I think impact assessment provides an opportunity for the geospatial scientists, for economists, for agriculture scientists to come together as a team. Otherwise, because again, the silos will be there. I think we are not going to be efficient. And I think, and also from our experience is that with the climate change and global level changes, I think the, systemic changes that we are talking about is really very complex. And it needs, really not only interdisciplinary approach, but, we have to go beyond a multidisciplinary approach. And even further, we were thinking of transdisciplinary approach to really deal with the complex issue that, climate change, if you look at it from agriculture, it is linked to, water resources. It's linked to any other department that you look around. It deals, you need to deal with it. So, and at the specialist level, as we are talking, I think we need to have that approach to deal with the issue is that to team up, that I think we should set example to go ahead. And my feeling is that geospatial tools being used for the impact assessment actually provides that venue where the different scientists can come together as a team and to deal with the issues. And one of the example in our region that we have been working with the NASA Surveyor, that team, where we have brought a lot of these various specialists together, for example, for climate services, and in agriculture. And so there then, team social scientists are required, agriculture scientists are required, and they can come together. So there are examples now being set up, but I think some more efforts are required. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to answer that question. Then he's as a geospatial expert, then I have to say that we have to play the multiple role, because we see the world, the diversity, and also the spatial and temporal changes. Actually that honestly speaking, during my last 8 years experience for that publishing research, I never published single author papers. That means we have done multidisciplinary research. In Sri Lanka, nowadays we are just talking National Science Foundation. Actually, I am the council member of the NRC, National Research Council as well. Now we want to more focusing on transdisciplinary and interdisciplinary research. Earlier, most of that science people, they want to collaborate with the social science people. The problem associated with the social problem basically based on the social issues. Science people can see the diversity and spatial and temporal changes, but they cannot understand why that happened. The social issues, we need to focus on them. That is, deforestation and other environmental degradation happen due to the poverty and that kind of things. People don't have place to live. In my country, we have a lot of big problem about the human-elephant conflict. Every month, 5 to 6 people die, and 5 to 6 elephants die due to that conflict in dry zone area. Then those are the things. What we can do is we need to form the multidisciplinary approach. Otherwise, single approach, because the problem, we cannot say this problem occurred due to this particular issue, that that origin, that it's a multiple reason. Then we need to find that social science, medical, and other management, and also some other aspect also we need to consider for that one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I think for any success that one would like to conduct would need interdisciplinary approach. Let me give an example of the studies that we conducted. I mean, it has to be started at the designing stage. If you want to study about rice, what is this rice about? What is it bred for? Who is the breeder? What are the traits? What are the areas where it can be, targeted to? What are the farmers' responses? Everybody has to be, considered before designing a study like that. So it's very important that we have, people from different disciplines that include social scientists, physical scientists, economists, so on, and other stakeholders. In our studies, we have designed studies only after doing a complete set of stakeholders meetings, and then kind of understood what, and we have changed sometimes our theory of change, our questions in mind based on what we saw actually was happening in the field. So if we don't do that process, I think, we may have later on challenges in what we actually try to solve. So I think this is about, the approach that you use. I don't want to generalize this statement that people don't want to. I worked with not social scientists, maybe remote sensing people who didn't want to share a slide with others. And, that's fine. But, it's not a generic statement. I have seen economists who I have learned agronomy from. So it only depends on your interest and your approach of working with different teams. Thank you.
Been said, so I won't repeat that. Yes, it is important. And I think as Manzoor was saying, and I think it's even going beyond multidisciplinary, it's probably talking about transdisciplinary approaches now, which I think is very, very critical. And yeah, there is issues of, I think one of the things that I've learned over the years is that if we really want, so the question is what makes multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary teams work? So I think it's important to be able to speak a common language. All of us think, I have a certain jargon that I use, and I think the whole world understands when I say some things. And the same is true with the geospatial folks and, economists and everybody else. So it's really about being on a common, on the same page when it comes to it. What is it that we are trying to achieve together as a team? What is in it for each of us? How does your work add value to mine? How does mine add value to you? And together, how can we get the best output? We talk about T-shaped researchers, and that's a principle I've always taken to heart. They say you have to be an expert in your own discipline. You need to understand something really well, have that depth, but have enough knowledge about others so that you are able to understand, use the knowledge and information others are providing you, tools others are providing you, and be able to use it and do the same with the others. So I think that's really, really key. And talking about that whole example, evidence thing. This example that I was giving from Orissa and the one that Manzoor also alluded to a few times, we are talking about evidence and, governments using some of these outputs and so on. That was emerged from a demand from the government. They asked us to do it. Therefore, there was a ready market. Somebody was willing to use it. So that made it a bit easier. So oftentimes, when we talk about evidence and influencing policies and so on, we are very, very supply push. I've done this piece of research. I've generated this piece of knowledge. I think you should use it. This is great because I've done it.
do they actually need it? Do we understand what evidence policymakers are looking for and then generate it? Okay, sometimes they might not know. So create that interest, create that demand for evidence, and not as an afterthought after you've done your work, but before you've done your work, and then do it. Scarce research resources, scarce development resources. Let's not put them all down the drain and then say, oh shit, we've spent so many years and money. And then here we are sitting on this great looking maps and tools and stuff, which nobody is actually using. So yeah, maybe we should also reflect a bit and see how we change the way we do things as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so we have 15 minutes left and we want to open it up to questions from folks sitting in the room. So if we have anyone that has a question, or maybe someone online as well, please raise your hand and mute your mic. Go ahead, Richard.
A very quick question first to Ranjitha and to Manzoor. And you don't have to answer it now because I want to say something else first, but what about ORSAC? ORSAC, most states in India, if not all states, have an agency a government agency that works with geospatial information. And I remember around 2015, when we were working on Swarna Sub 1, trying to get ORSAC engaged. They seem to have the capacity, but they seem to be someone looking for a problem. So I'm just wondering if that's evolved in any positive way, and if not, why you might think that might be. The other thing I wanted, though, to talk about, and it's not really a question, it's more of a statement, and I guess I would aim it to Farid, since you talked about Nepal. But one of my other grants has a concept they call data democracy, and their principle or philosophy is that if you extract data from a community or any other entity, you should try to give something back. And I worked in the late 90s, but let's say somewhere around 1980, the government of Nepal gave every community plots of forest to manage themselves, right? And in about 1983, the government of Denmark, using fixed wing videography, did a whole flyover of Nepal. So they got an initial baseline image, if you will, of those community forests. And then another Scandinavian country did it in the late 90s. So you had kind of a pre-post look. And we took those images and we're doing a lot of work with trying to improve community forest management. But the light bulb came on, I thought, for communities when they actually saw these resources from space, if you will. This was lower altitude fixed wing aircraft. The encroachment over a 20-year period on almost every community forest was really significant. And then, but people, if you sort of monitor it year by year, it doesn't look like so much. But if you put it over a 20-year span, it really changed, I think, a lot of mindsets in these. And there was a lot of talk then about, community-based regulation about how to manage these forest resources, how to prevent encroachment, how to actually penalize it. So anyway, the point is, I think now you could go back in Nepal and with high resolution imagery, do that whole same process again. And it would be really interesting to see, and we could go back and look at those communities that really took active engagement in trying to prevent those types of things to see if it's actually changed. But all that to say that giving that information back to those communities, I thought was really powerful. And I haven't heard it come up in the last couple of days, but I think it's something we should all keep in mind. So.
All right, I know there were a few more hands.
Do you guys want to respond to some of?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead. Yes, please.
Yeah. On the ORSAC, so the government now said they will work with, the department has said they will work with ORSAC to do the mapping and all year after year. So yeah.
Sorry, what ORSAC stand for?
Orisa, remote sensing, space agent. Yeah, whatever. Yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah. So I think they are trying.
Thank you very much. I think you are aware that, one of the most significant achievement of the past, let's say, for many years for Nepal is that community forestry. And I think all institutions, including, funding agencies, they all celebrate that. One of the successful examples. And as you have rightly mentioned that, I think this is the time to really go back and see that, how much that, effort is sustainable and what has happened over a period of time. I think it's a good time to look at that. And one of the things that we did a kind of piloting of the REDD plus program with the community forestry in Nepal. And there, really what we found was that on pilot basis, with the Norwegian government, support, to see that whether people can realize that the conservation efforts are actually now bringing back money to them, and they can really see that. So it was kind of measuring the, how much forest you have in each community. And so just to, as you said, that in certain areas, there are a lot of encroachments and many other things. And I think what we got was very, very successful, examples in few places that where we have tried, and we have handed over that to the government for a large, RADD program. But one of the, I don't know the evidence behind it, but one of the degradation causes that in between was also the conflict that had happened. And many people attribute that. And because one of the reason is that the people who went to, forest for fighting, actually they remained there for quite some time. And one of the major source they used was the forest, actually, for the different purposes. And that actually led to, in many places, forest, degradation quite significantly, actually. So, but I think we need some kind of evidence that what had happened in between, and how much, and like that. So thank you very much for the
I'm Tomoko from Precision Development. Thank you so much for an interesting discussion. Another question about Orissa. Just wondering, with all the monitoring tools that you developed, to what extent the government was involved in kind of the design and the types of information that they wanted? And now that you have them, if or how the government is using them?
Thanks. So it was actually a very, very stakeholder-driven process, I would say. So each time at every step, there were consultations with the government, the relevant people who would be using the sub-department and so on, multiple iterations of each of those tools actually to get it to a stage where, to get it to the shape that they wanted, and a lot of training sessions and so on happening. But I would love, and then, it was about building capacity within the department. A lot of training happened. And then, we even sent folks from there to SARMAP to stay a couple of months, get trained and so on. They come back, and then 2 weeks down the line, they're transferred to, another position where they don't have anything to do with any of this. So sometimes it's a wasted effort. But then, so we've been trying to even just hand over everything to them, and they don't have anyone in the department who can take charge of that and ownership of that, So these are the kinds of challenges that you face. But people, government folks at the district level are actually using some of these. And we continue. We've had a long engagement in Orissa and continue to have, we continue to have presence, one project or another. So we are working, even before we finished this project, we started working on another project, which is again funded by the government. So we are able to build on all this, zoom in onto three districts, and then actually take this further in those. Thank you. Yeah.
So that the point is long-term engagement in a particular place helps. Unfortunately, all our projects these days are 3 years if you're very lucky, 2 years otherwise. I mean, what difference can you make? Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Tomoko, you have a project in Orissa, the rice yield, is that right?
Right.
Yeah, so Miss, have you talked on that particular topic? Yeah, so please.
Also, that one thing is that I want to say that the generation gap also the big problem in some kind of when come to the policy, that elder generation, that the top level, they are not accepting that kind of things from geospatial analysis because they don't know about that one. They are totally dependent on the traditional knowledge, that kind of things. Another thing is my country has also, they are not select suitable person to send to the capacity building workshop and things. They will select based on the top positions. They have buddies and darlings and buddies in some of the most of the organization. Then they send not select the suitable person. They send someone to the conference and also some training program. And some of the reported that even they didn't attend to that meeting and they are shopping and something like that. Then finally, in addition to that, no any audit regarding that training or capacity building. That normally in my university, we start one program. Anyone went to training or some PhD or master program, he should present at least to the larger community to share knowledge. At least we want to know what he has done during the last 3 years. But the government organization know that kind of things, and also the change in and transferring and that kind of things also the big problem. One person, the very geospatial person, they can transfer to the another policy division. At least they don't have computer for that with that GIS software. Then that is the problem with ground level situation.
We had the clout to actually choose who we wanted to send, and we sent a brilliant young woman. She came back and got transferred. That one we couldn't control.
Should I? Thank you very much, first of all, for making this session especially dedicated for South Asian region. As the slides said, the opportunities and challenges and then the spotlight example. So I would like to quote few things which came in my mind, especially working 20 plus years into the field of geospatial technology and its application into the agriculture. There are certain opportunities I will first speak on, and then the challenges which we are confronting with. The opportunities are enormous, as we are seeing that there are the different projects which are being taken up by the different agencies, made with the government agencies or others. One such opportunity that will exist in India would be that a large scale conversion of fallow. You also mentioned that rice fallow field is being taken up, and that is being converted into the rice and oil seed. So that there exists large opportunity as to how this government initiative is moving and what impact it is bringing to. The other opportunities are, these are kind of lesson that we can learn from already ongoing activities, and especially I would like to mention the initiative of the government of India. Now, every project that has been taken up and is being taken up by the government of India, it is now having an integral component of geospatial tagging. And I will differ from my friend from Sri Lanka that the policymakers are not ready to adapt this technology. It is unlike our country, and in India, the entire government, especially government of India and other governments, the state governments, they're very keen to adapt this technology. And now everything, like if there is any infrastructure that is being created, that is needed to be geotagged, that is needed to be remotely sensed, and then only the grant would be released. And especially I would like to mention the direct money transfer into the beneficiaries account, and that is taking place out of the verification from the ground using this geospatial technology. I would like to quote example of the toilet those have been making, and the large number those have been making, but then the money has been transferred on the basis of geotagging of this, and the similar other example like house which have been made. So everything has been done. Another good example, and which is also lesson for others, would be like the government of India has used extensively this geospatial technology for residue management, and certain policy has been brought on the basis of this geospatial information, and now it has been banned that nobody can burn the residue into the field, because it was really creating havoc in the national capital region. And the impact of this is because it is being continuously monitored through remote sensing, so it has been drastically reduced. But then when you are bringing one policy, so it will also have impact on other policy, and which is happening that because what is the understanding that maximum burning will take place in the month of November. So now the farmers have advanced the operations, like sowing has been advanced, so that now they're skipping that window. So these are the other implications when you are using the technology. So how one policy will bring impact on other policy. But then again, the geospatial technology is being used to monitor as to how much the area has been advanced by the farmer. So, I mean, this is the beautiful example of application of geospatial technology in agriculture. As far as the knowledge sharing is concerned, there exists lots of scope, because this knowledge is existing in silos here and there. It is scattered all around. But the thing is that we are not coming up together, we are not sharing our knowledge, and because we are not sharing, so what is being done, that everybody is starting from the scratch and then reaching at that point, and then again that project will cease. And then I mean, it is kind of duplication and replication which is being done, because we are not having that kind of I mean, openness in our mind, in our mindset, and in our behavior. So I really I would like to urge everyone to be very open in sharing, especially the knowledge and the data. Data is again very important, and is not being shared. Not only the data which we are generating in the project, but the data which is being developed, which is being generated at national scale. For example, there is huge a repository of remote sensing images which are lying in the boxes of national agencies. Similar is the case with the meteorological data, which is lying with different agencies, but then the sharing policy is absent. So we really need to learn the lessons from the experiences of the different persons of the different agencies, and then we build up our program on the basis of that learning. Thank you very much for giving this wonderful opportunity for speaking to our colleagues. Thank you very much.
Okay. Hannah, one more question from you. All right. Well, thank you.